All right, so paintbrush care is maybe not sexy and glamorous, but it is going to help you a lot in your watercolor journey. And not only that, but as you start investing in maybe nicer paintbrushes or more expensive paintbrushes, you are going to want to know how to take care of them so that they can last you a long time. So as you are painting with watercolor paint, you are going to be using watercolor paintbrushes, and I have here a couple of my go-to ones. Depending on the brand, the sizing of your paintbrush is going to be a little bit different. Let's see, this is this is a 2 from the Pigeon Letters, and this is a 1 from Paulina Bright. So they're both round brushes, and you can see they're very different in size, but I would expect a 1 to be smaller, and as it gets bigger, the brush size gets bigger. So this is a 2 and a 6 from the Pigeon Letters, as you can see. These are my go-to paintbrushes, but I started off just using like a paintbrush kit mixed set from something like Target in the kids section. So you don't need anything fancy, but what you do need is to know how to take care of your brush. The first thing is that anytime you're painting, you're going to want to have a rag or paper towel. This is just an old towel that I have. You could use a towel or cotton, and it's just cut up. And I sometimes will also use paper towel or toilet paper and just fold them up. And those I will use several times until they are completely dirtied. They will dry in between, and you can reuse them over and over again several times. So don't waste them if you can help it. But otherwise, I recommend using a rag or something like that. And the reason you're going to want to use this is because when you're done painting or in between painting, you're going to use it at the end to wipe off excess water, and you're going to use it while you're painting to pick up extra water that you might have. So say I got too much water on this brush, I'm gonna dab it near the bottom so that it pulls off some of the extra water, and then I can go in and paint without having to, waste a lot of pigment or anything like that by starting fresh. So always have some kind of a cloth, paper towel with you. When you are done with your painting, just make sure if you're using something that you're going to reuse, that it is put somewhere that it can dry, and either hang it up or just set it off to the side so it can dry well. Now, as you're using your paintbrush, you will want to go with the grain of your brush, and that is both for drying off your brush. I'm not going to push it against the grain. It's going to splay my bristles back, and it might permanently bend or break some of my bristles. So you want to go with the grain of your brush. You will also want to do that as you're painting. So I'm not going to paint against the bristles. It's going to tweak my bristles around, but I am going to go with the grain of my brush, meaning that it is pulling along with the grain of my brush, not against it. I'm not going to stab down or anything like that. Now, if you have say an older brush, or sometimes I'll pick up brushes at like used paint shops or thrift stores or garage sales, you will find some that already have the bristles pretty splayed out. So if you are wanting to create something with a little more texture and you want to be able to splat it down, I would just use a brush that is older, or that you got at a thrift store or garage sale, something like that. Because then you have something that you can create cool textures with and different shapes, but you're not going to be injuring the brushes that you want to be using long-term, as long as possible. And then once this one gets too old and the bristles start going everywhere, you can use it as a texture brush later. Now, when you are done painting or in between paintings, you are never going to do this. You will never let it rest on its head, and you will never leave it soaking in water. It hurts me to even do it for that brief amount of time. The reason being that we don't want to get water into here where it's going to then impair the attachment to the stick. But we also just want to be mindful again of the bristles. So if you just leave it soaking in water, it's going to saturate your bristles. They're going to start splaying out, but you're also just going to impair the wetness or the attachment area in here because it won't dry as well in here as it will on the ends. If you are using a paint like gouache that needs, or acrylic, where you want to mix them together, use a paint palette to mix them together. You don't want to use your watercolor brushes. I will use either a completely different brush, like one of these, or I just have some cheap sets of brushes that I will use for gouache sometimes, and I will use my palette knife to mix gouache colors together. Again, you want to really preserve the bristles on your brush, and the more you're mixing things together, not only are you losing gouache paint or acrylic paint as you're mixing, because you'll have to rinse that out, all the paint left in the bristles, but you're also impeding the quality of the bristles on your brush. Similarly, if this had no water in it, I would also say don't let it rest on its head. Don't leave it lying on its head to dry, or, you know, in between anything. I will leave it resting on top of my water cup like this, or you can get a paint rest, but I definitely just don't use it. Leave it resting on its head. Another thing to do is to clean it well right away. So if you're cleaning between colors, for instance, you're going to clean it well, dab it on your paper towel or your cloth to go in between colors, right? So that you can pick up a clean color and make sure there's no paint left on here. But then when you're done, I would go ahead and take this and rinse it off in a sink, maybe with some gentle soap, to just really make sure you're getting out all the paint in here so it's not drying in here and, again, affecting the quality of the bristles. When you are storing it, you want to store it clean, dry, and reshaped. So initially I will make sure my brush is really clean. Say I've already washed it up. You can go in and either I will pick up excess water by going with the grain on my brush against my towel to pick up any extra water, and that reshapes it, but you can also reshape it with your hand. And then I will let it dry horizontally somewhere. If I feel like it's pretty dry anyway, I will go ahead and put it back in my paintbrush jar, but otherwise I'll just leave it drying on top of my towel. And then when they're completely dry, I'll put it away from there. Otherwise, I just store any of my dry paint brushes in this little paintbrush jar that I have, and leave it like that when I'm not painting with them. The last thing that I would recommend is when you are painting, you use two waters. One is your dirty water, and the other, if I had another jar here, would be your clean water. So after I'm done painting with red, I would want to dry that off or rinse that off in my dirty water. And then if I want to pick up something like yellow, but I don't want it to look orange, I've cleaned it off, but now if I dip into here, this is relatively clean water still, but say it was a really dark muddied color, I would then not want to take that paint and go dip it into my yellow. So I would have a clean jar of water so that when my brush is clean, I can then dip in my clean water to go and pick up another color, particularly any of your lighter colors like your yellows, your light greens, orange, things like that, that you are going to muddy much more easily by using dirty water with them. All the colors will muddy if you use dirty water, but it will be most apparent and most obvious with your colors like whites and yellows, and paler, lighter colors, light pink, light green, light blue, all those. So those are the tips and tricks I have for paintbrush care. If you have any questions or tips of your own, go ahead and leave those in the comment section below, and make sure you subscribe to not miss another video.
Hey guys, it's me again, Isa. If you liked this tutorial, make sure you subscribe to my channel and leave a comment. Tell me something you loved about the class. Feel free to ask me some questions, but definitely subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any future tutorials. See you next time.